All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Electronic Records Day webinar. I'm Catherine Behringer, Director of Appraisal and Description at the Maryland State Archives, and also the co-chair of the SERI Education and Programming Subcommittee. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, which discusses artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, ML, in government archives settings. We have a lot of great speakers today, and our time extends up to 3 p.m. Eastern to allow plenty of time for questions and discussions. But first, I'm just going to share a couple of announcements. We are nearing the end of our 2023 slate, but stay tuned for our upcoming offerings. In November, we are following up on the success of the Chatting with COSA model, and we're going to have a Chatting with SERI webinar. It's going to be on November 14th at 2 Eastern, and the entire hour will be open to discussion on the topic of web harvesting. I also want to call your attention to a few online resources we have. These webinars and more are available online through COSA's YouTube page. On our YouTube page, you'll find a playlist specific to our SERI videos, and we also have some instructional videos there. COSA's website also has the COSA Resource Center, which is a source for a lot of great material. I'm also going to take this time to ask you to take a few minutes to complete our poll. We're always working on these webinars, and we want to make sure that we are presenting topics to you that are of interest to you. So we wanted to take a poll to help us gauge your interest in topics and possibly get new ideas for topics and speakers. So we have a ranking question. In this rank, 1 is the least interested and 5 is the most interested. So please rank these topics how you like it. And then there's also an opportunity for you to enter in a free text box other topics or speakers you would like us to have in our webinar series. And we really do appreciate any thoughts that you have. Thank you so much for filling out this poll. We really want to make webinars that are of interest to you. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel of speakers for today. Joshua Hackel is the Electronic Records Program Administrator for the Illinois State Archives, where he serves as the technology subject matter expert, assisting state and local agencies with their records-related technology questions and managing the archive's digital preservation and modernization efforts. Jill Reilly is the Digital Engagement Director in the Office of Innovation at the National Archives and Records Administration. In addition to her 10 years at NARA, she has served at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Agricultural Library, Library of Congress, Law Library, and U.S. Department of Education, focusing throughout her career on digital access and discovery. Carol Lagundo is the Director for Digitization Partnerships and Outreach at the National Archives and Records Administration. Her 30-year career at NARA has focused on increasing public access to NARA's holdings online. Hannah Bergman is NARA's Director of Litigation and Chief Privacy Officer with NARA's General Counsel. She advises on federal and presidential records and oversees federal court litigation and a team of archivists responding to FOIA requests for NARA operational records. Peter Anderton is the Vice President of Product Strategy at Preservica. Peter directs the innovation team at Preservica on how best to harness new techniques and technologies to meet the evolving needs of archivists and record managers. Simone Wagner is the Industry Product Specialist at Preservica, looking at use cases in government preservation. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Joshua Hackel.
Thank you, Catherine. Joshua Hager shares the poster. We'll get started. Did Joshua Hager disappear? So I can try to bring it up myself.
It does seem that he has disappeared, which is unfortunate since he was our backup plan.
Okay, I'll try to share my screen here.
There is a link to the poster in the chat box as well.
Okay, let me know when you can see it.
There we have it. Thank you, Josh.
Okay, so here we are. For the Tools and Resources Subcommittee this year, we tried to, for our theme of artificial intelligence and machine learning, first we wanted to kind of introduce the topic to the archive community. So general 30,000-foot view, then do a list of use cases, create a list of tools, and then also try doing some tools testing so we can give instructions for how archives can manage and use these tools. And the poster here kind of reflects the first two parts of giving that 30,000-foot view, as well as providing some use cases for archives. So here at the top of the poster, some definitions, tried in bold here basically to provide a more easier to read part for archivists, basically distilling down what each section does. So for machine learning, basically teaching machines to recognize patterns. And for natural language processing, it's helping computers understand human languages. And then this last part on the top, basically making sure that this doesn't replace archivists, this helps them. So we're not getting rid of archival jobs. We're basically giving out some of the processes that take a lot of time and are more, can be automatable. Going down the bottom here for uses of archival settings. So the first one is the patrons reference services. This kind of reflects basically how companies are using chatbots now to kind of do their first level of support. They can handle the very basic questions, show me X, and kind of what are some related topics, but still can use a experienced reference archivist later on when the more detailed, more nuanced questions arise. Next up with the preservation and restoration part. This is where AI can kind of look at an image that's kind of partially broken, a fragment, and try to fill in the blanks and see what possibly could be there. The next step, document imaging and metadata management, where the AI kind of looks at the document and pulls out the information that's needed. Fill the metadata, as well as just looking over a large trove of documents and be able to classify them, archival, not archival. And then finally, the OCR and redaction. This follows up on a lot of what legal e-discovery tools are doing. When they have a lot of records, they need to redact certain bits or put some out for e-discovery and some are not. So in all this basically gives us a very quick basis for what things can be used, but also kind of there are some limitations there. The one major one we found out in our discovery was that sometimes AI makes things up. Sometimes you have to specifically tell the AI to use the information you have. Don't add things to it, which was an interesting feature. And also see if you can provide nuance to it as well, because AI often can just sees what it says and doesn't add any more to it. And hopefully coming up later on, now that we finished the use cases and more 30,000-foot view, the subcommittee will be moving on to listing all the tools and also instructions on how to use those tools. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm up. Is that correct?
Yes, you are up.
Okay, great. Just confirming. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Did my screen come up?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Thanks for confirming. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the organizers today. Thanks for everyone who's joined. Looking forward to the conversation and having the chance to share some information about AI strategy, pilots, and projects at NARA to increase access and protect privacy related to the National Archives records. I'll be going over some things at a high level, and then Carol will talk a lot more in detail about the 1950 Census Project, and these kind of dovetail together along with Hannah's presentation as well. So thanks for your attention today. Okay, so I'll be talking a little bit about NARA, the AI framework in which we're doing these activities, external collaboration we've been doing. I'll be highlighting AI strategies and use cases, talking about content sources at NARA, and I'll walk through some information about pilots and proofs of concept, and then we'll kind of see later again what questions anybody has too. Happy to discuss. So about NARA, you probably know that we have locations across the country, that the presidential libraries are part of our network, and we also have record centers as well. NARA's mission really focuses on access to records. We maintain the federal government's records of continuing value. It's about 2 to 3% of the records created, and includes more than 13 billion pages, 18 billion maps, charts, and architectural drawings, more than 43 million images, billions of electronic records. We've got about 8% of our electronic records available online for download, and miles of film and video. So with our connections and being part of the federal government, a lot of our framework is in this federal context, and we're very interested in benchmarking what federal archives are doing, and then also other kinds of government, state archives, and international government archives as well. We're really starting our work from that perspective of responsible AI and responsible and governance models that allow us to pursue AI responsibly at NARA. So the focus is really on transparency and making sure that we give notice and clear explanations of how we're using AI and machine learning in our work. We're being very mindful of risk management, and I would say that that's a lot of our conversation at this point in time in that federal government space and across federal libraries, archives, galleries, and museums. We're looking a lot at intersections with ethics and discrimination protections, and this is really key to the work around doing no harm with AI and ML. And again, it's part of that risk mitigation to plan from that at the start and continue to iterate based on lessons learned and to share with other organizations so that we can do better and leverage each other's lessons learned. So a key part related to that is also data privacy, and I've been highlighting that at the top, and we continue to look at it. We're being mindful of things like mosaic effect and also data privacy in particular with these AI and ML tools, and ways also that we can use AI and ML tools to further protect privacy. It really kind of can be looked at from both angles. When we're looking at innovation and opportunities, these tools are here and they've kind of hit a moment, and it's why we're all talking about it so much, but there is so much growth potential ahead, and there's a lot of opportunity to innovate and try things and learn. And that's why we are, again, definitely pursuing pilots and interested in sharing with other government archives so we can learn from each other. And that comes back around to that collaboration and engagement piece. And I'll talk some more about it, but for us, our approach is really about collaborating internally across NARA to leverage technical and subject matter and engagement expertise, and then also external engagement, both with other institutions, peer institutions, and also with the communities and stakeholders from those communities themselves. It's a really key part of the work that we're doing at NARA overall right now on so many fronts, engaging stakeholders from communities, and also particularly attention to underserved communities in those areas, and making sure that we're engaging folks to get upstream input that will help inform our efforts in using AI and ML tools to enhance description and protect privacy. Two resources that I particularly wanted to call out, three resources. First is our federal executive order around trustworthy AI that came out in 2020. There's the 2022 blueprint for the AI Bill of Rights. And that's, again, where they talk a lot about discrimination and preventions for that, ethical considerations, data privacy, a lot of those pieces line up with that along with the transparency aspects. And then I really want to highlight this NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework that was put out earlier this year in 2023. And we have talked a lot with Elham Tabasi, who was the coordinator on this effort, and the Office of Management and Budget in the federal government is encouraging us across the executive branch to look at this framework and incorporate it into our frameworks that we will develop at the agency level around governance and risk management and ways to assess and iterate on progress and compliance with these different areas that are important as you reflect on pursuing AI work. They set up with NIST. Now there's an information center where they're sharing use cases and playbooks and a lot of other materials that complement and supplement the risk management framework. I've been mentioning external collaboration. I really want to highlight in particular conversations that we've been having since 2020 with Library of Congress, in particular LC Labs, Virginia Tech University Libraries and the Center for Humanities, and then also Smithsonian Institution Office of the Chief Information Officer, their data science lab. And so we have been co-hosting a number of workshops that have been open to leaders at federal libraries and archives, and also academic university archives and libraries and galleries to talk about leadership challenges, risk management, and share lessons learned related to AI and ML. And so we've been in these workshops exploring new approaches to AI for digital collections, emphasizing ethical frameworks. And again, I mentioned Elham Tabasi before. We had her come as a guest speaker for one of these workshops that was focused on risk management, looked at procurement related challenges as they specifically apply to the federal government setting. And just explored use cases and other pilots that we've been working on across our institutions related to exchanging information for AI and ML projects related to cultural heritage. And what are some of those unique considerations when it comes to these historical resources and the importance of engaging communities and getting feedback and being very transparent about how the AI is being used, and our responsibility as public cultural heritage institutions and the value of sharing knowledge and lessons learned and best practices among each other. And so we've also been engaged in some different conferences recently, sharing what we've been doing together and engaging others in the broader community, including internationally. And so coming up in November, we'll be participating in the AI for LAM conference that will be in Vancouver, Canada. We participated in the JCDL conference out in New Mexico this past summer. And we are looking ahead to doing some additional workshops in the future. So if you would be interested in those, I encourage you to reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end. And I think that external collaboration, that information sharing and networking in this area is so important. There's so much emerging, and there's a lot that we can benefit from each other by sharing lessons learned, project plans, ways we've implemented governance models at our institutions, and also sharing actual training models and data sets and data cards, and that there are ways that we can accelerate how relevant, effective these tools are at our agencies by sharing across other cultural institutions and archives. So next up, I was going to talk a little bit more about the AI strategies that we're employing at NARA. One of the key pieces around this is planning for the future and having pilots and innovation that allow us to develop proofs of concept and try things and experiment, but really always with an eye on addressing challenges that NARA has related to the future, particularly around scalability and addressing the scale and volume of electronic records coming our way, and the mass digitization efforts that we have underway through a combination of partnerships, in-house digitization, and vendor-supported work, and ways to enhance description, increase access. As NARA's volume of content continues to grow exponentially online, we really are looking at piloting and creating proof of concept tools that will help us address challenges related to discovery, indexing, and enhancing access so that our customers will be able to find what they're looking for and have context and have enhanced metadata and ways that we can use tools to increase access through metadata and also through search tools and search techniques. The internal collaboration that we've been doing across NARA is really important, and it's something that has been very intentional, and we continue to build on. In the Office of Innovation, we have the online catalog, we have community management and partnerships group, we have project management, and also our web program and our usability experts and user experience experts on that team. And so we have a lot of strength in our diversity of perspectives in Office of Innovation and a passion for trying new things that can benefit staff and programs across NARA, and a lot of expertise and experience in collaboration and that kind of engagement and engaging stakeholders. So we are really excited about the collaboration happening at NARA in this area. We're working really closely with our colleagues in information services, our Chief Innovation Officer, our Chief Technology Officer, Chief Data Officer, staff that are on the data team, working with the Chief Data Officer, who are bringing AI and ML experience to the table too, and helping us experiment and develop those proof of concepts. We have our staff, our archivists in research services, and I'll talk a little bit later about how they're getting involved in a project around search relevancy. And same with our colleagues in presidential libraries and legislative archives. And they're getting a lot of questions also around researchers interested in doing more with digitized copies, digital documents, and born digital texts that they can use for training language models that researchers and different research institutes have in this area. And they're interested in ways that they can share back with us metadata enhancements, tags, and things, and identifying entities that they might be able to share back with us. And then I've mentioned before contractors support, as might be similar for many of you, a lot of our technical development, we have some developers on staff, and technical experts that are federal employees, but we also are collaborating a lot with contractors who support this work and support different systems and have operations and maintenance activities where they support us, and also development, modernization, and enhancements, DME activities where they support different things like the catalog and other systems at NARA, like our electronic records archives and more. I wanted to highlight around archivists in the loop, and also thinking about citizen archivists in the loop. And this is where I think it's really important when there's AI and ML tools that we have humans that are playing a really key role in the loop to validate quality, mitigate for risk, look out for unintended consequences or unintended results, and be really mindful about having our expertise both on staff and then that citizen archivist community be engaged in teaching the machine and having it be better and give feedback on those automated results so that the models can be improved and the results can get better. And it's really important to not just have mostly technical expertise. It needs to be this mix of archival and subject matter experts working with technical experts. I've mentioned our citizen archivists. It's really a group with tens of thousands of citizen archivists and contributors who work on our online catalog on History Hub. I'll touch on them in a minute. And so we have this group of volunteers, many in the US, but also internationally, who get involved in sharing information and enhancing records, and they're really passionate about access and increasing access. And there are opportunities for us to leverage their participation, and they are really receptive to it around improving those AI machine suggested metadata and tags. And I've been talking throughout about the importance of sharing knowledge. We've been very keen on this at NARA. We, in the Office of Innovation, hosted a town hall for all of NARA staff, sharing work that we've been doing in this area, similar to what I'm talking to you all about today, talking about our collaboration with LOC and Smithsonian and others. And we just really think that it's a important era and time and moment to be making sure that we share information and draw on ideas from everywhere that will really help improve innovation and help us solve problems, solve challenges in innovative ways. Here is a list of some of our use cases from NARA's AI inventory. As part of what the executive branch in the federal government has been asked to do, every agency is supposed to have a listing online of their AI use cases. And this list is drawn from NARA's. And so I won't kind of read this out, but at a high level, there's a lot related to PII, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. Also declassification and e-discovery, looking at using AI tools and piloting around FOIA. And Hannah will talk more about that later. There's several ideas that relate to self-describing records, using descriptive metadata that is available to rough draft, fill in, and provide additional metadata fields that are required, and ask the archivist or the describer to go ahead and validate if that looks right, or they could go ahead and correct it. This would be so important for web records, which we know are going to be huge volume of content to describe, and self-describing records could be really beneficial, and using some tools and piloting that there. I'll talk a little bit more about AI related to semantic search, and we're just looking at different ways we can draw on natural language processing and large language models to enhance chat experiences, to enhance what reference types of interactions look like, and try to help serve customers in new ways, and draw on resources that we have, and kind of iterate and build from there. So I was going to talk a little bit about some of the content and sources that we have that are what we draw on with this content and these projects. We have a lot of metadata for archival descriptions in the National Archives catalog, and we have NARA's Lifecycle Data Requirements Guide, which includes our data model and our data elements, definitions, and standards, and also our authority lists and authority files. We have the archival content itself. We have digital objects in our content, that including optical character recognition text, OCR text, electronic records text and data sets, images, maps, AV materials, and more. And I've been mentioning our user contributors. We have all this user contributed content of tags, transcriptions, and comments that our citizen archivists, our community, provides and contributes. This here is a screenshot of the Juneteenth order here in the catalog, and you can see that it has 14 comments, 11 tags, and this is just a snapshot of the kind of data available at that item level. Later I can put a link to the catalog in the chat here. This is showing History Hub. It's a user community. Carolyn Lagundo, who's going to speak next, her team manages this site, and it's great for enhancing, supporting researchers with questions and frequently asked questions. And so it's a knowledge base, and it has questions and answers, staff, researchers who have information to share, have exchanges here on History Hub, and it's a platform that we integrate with our Contact Us form at NARA, and this is great potential that we can tap into as a source where things are written in plain language, and we can do some natural language processing on this content and use it as a source to answer questions about our records. And so this knowledge base is structured but full of contributed content, and there's a lot of potential here. To highlight one of our first big pilots and proofs of concept, we have been working on identifying PII in records that NARA has already put up in the catalog that they maybe are kind of ones that slipped through. We have a whole matrix. We work with our privacy officer around what's digitized in the years, but still sometimes some PII can slip through. And so right now we had a sampling method, a human sampling method, and a formula for doing that sampling. And if somebody flags for us that they found a social security number or a date of birth while they were transcribing or just looking at a record, we have a process where we do a higher level of sampling and come up with an assessment based on what the scale or scope of the issue is. And this comes up like a couple times a year. And so what we wanted to do was develop an automated tool using AI tools based on Textract for our OCR that we're already using, and then layering Amazon's Comprehend on top of it. And we developed a custom model in Comprehend to help us identify PII in records. And the use case for this is just, it's meant to be a little bit rough, but help us have more data points so that if things come up and get flagged, we have more data, and we would have done an automated machine pass at that whole set of records, all the digitized copies in the catalog, and inform the privacy officer how many times it flagged some PII. And this is just give another data point. While we continue to pilot this, we would do it in parallel to the sampling that an archives technician would still do. And have this as another data point. But the end goal would be to work on refining this, and we're going to do a comparison with Google Suite tools, and we may do some other comparisons as well to see what's the best tool for this use case. And this is for, again, kind of downstream, but we're looking at ways we could apply it upstream before stuff went online on the catalog, that they could run one more quick check on it and see if the screening tool helped us identify things more thoroughly. It's been interesting. I would say that the tool did a pretty good job, but the custom model did better than what Comprehend did out of the box for us. It was tricky for us to find some content that was a good use case example to test this out that did have enough PII in it that was already cleared to go, but to see if it caught it, because in our kind of test training data set, we needed a lot of PII in there. So that was kind of an interesting challenge. We had some interesting lessons learned there. It most often had false hits around false positives around finding another number or another string of numbers and thinking that might be PII. It wasn't that it missed a lot of PII, it was more that it sometimes picked up other things and flagged it for PII, and it wasn't. So we were working on refining the model with that. So it was an interesting pilot. I think we learned a lot. And again, this upcoming year, we're going to sort of recreate it in a sort of a comparison with the Google Suite tools that we have available to us at NARA. Another pilot that we are just getting started on relates to semantic search, and we have been using tools that are compatible with open search. That's what we use for the catalog search, and looking to do semantic search concept mapping and using existing knowledge graphs, existing models to put it up against the OCR text of digitized documents that are typewritten to see if we can improve search recall, so that if you search on a concept, would it find related concepts for you and hopefully find additional relevant records related to your search. And this is a project where, as we got started, we realized that we wanted to bring in some more reference staff, some more subject matter experts from research services and presidential libraries to help us with evaluating and assessing relevance here, to really have the right experts on the team in the room to work on this with us. So we're just kind of getting started, and we were at a kind of a inflection point where we realized we wanted to engage more subject matter experts to help. So this last slide has links to the catalog, to National Archives website overall, History Hub. Also our catalog newsletter, which if you don't subscribe, I encourage you to subscribe. It has a lot of news about what's happening with the catalog, and we have hundreds of thousands of subscribers on that list. So we have a great engagement there. We put it out monthly about. And here's also my information if you want to get in touch with anything. So thanks for your attention. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand things off to Carol. Thanks.
Thanks, Jill. gonna go ahead and share my screen. Good afternoon. So my name is Carol Lagundo, and I am the Director of Digitization Partnerships and Outreach at the National Archives and Records Administration within the Office of Innovation. I also work with CHIL. Thanks to the presenters, the organizers, and everyone attending today. So my presentation today is going to focus on how NARA used artificial intelligence and citizen engagement when we launched the 1950 census last year. So just to give you a little background, the decennial census is mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, and it's been conducted every 10 years since 1790. The census responses are confidential and protected under Title 13, and so records can only be released to the public 72 years after each census is taken. And so NARA begins preparing for each census release years in advance. In fact, we launched 1950 census last year, and we've already started preparing for the 1960 census release. We've started digitizing that microfilm. The 1950 census was digitized from just a little over 6,000 rolls of microfilm, and upon completion, that data collection was comprised of 6.5 million population schedule images. We had more than 33,000 Indian reservation schedule images, more than 9,600 enumeration district maps, and more than 234,000 enumeration district descriptions. And so when we started planning to develop the 1950 census website, the goals that we came to that project with were that we wanted it to be very rapidly scalable. When we launched the 1940 census, the website did not hold up to the amount of traffic that we received when we first launched that website. And so we didn't want to have that happen again. So we wanted it to be rapidly scalable. We wanted it to be mobile friendly because we know based on a lot of the statistics that we have now that people are coming to our site and researching from their phones and their tablets. We wanted users to be able to search by state, county, enumeration district number, and for the special Indian reservation census by reservation. And we wanted to provide a draft name index so that people could search by names. And we wanted to be able to provide the bulk or put the data online so that people could do a bulk download of the full data set. So we accomplished the bulk download by putting that on Amazon's Registry of Open Data. And we launched that at the same time we launched the website, which was at 12:01 a.m. on April 1st, 2022. And then in order to provide a name search, we leveraged Amazon's text extract tool to extract approximately 130 million handwritten names from the population schedules. Textract is Amazon Web Services AIML optical character recognition tool. So there are more than 140,000 enumerators that went door to door in 1950 to take the census. And so you had a wide variant of handwriting. Some was legible, some not so much. And there were also different forms. So you have the general population schedule, but you also have different forms for Puerto Rico, Alaska, Hawaii, the Virgin Islands, the Indian reservations, and then things like crews who were on vessels. And so our web developer spent probably close to a year, more than several months, working with AWS engineers to train Textract on the different schedule forms and where the names would be located to pick those up and to extract them. And so we knew that the name index wouldn't be 100% accurate. We wanted to develop a transcription module that we also included when we launched the website so that users would be able to transcribe names that weren't interpreted correctly by the AIML tool. We wanted to make it easy for them to transcribe names. So all we asked was that they provide, or all we required was that they provide a valid email address, and then they would be sent a code. Once they typed in that code, they could start transcribing names. This is important not just because I think we ended up estimating that the accuracy of the names that were extracted ended up being between 60 and 70%, but also when enumerators went door to door, they only captured the full name of the head of household. So if there were several people living in the household, their full names weren't captured. You would just have their first name and probably just a middle initial. And so if people come and they're researching and trying to find, family members as part of genealogy research, they're not going to be able to search first and last name of other household members. And so by adding this transcription module, people could come in and actually put those full names in there. We also enabled fuzzy search on the website so that in addition to exact matches when people were searching names, it would also come back with similar names. So just using my last name as an example, Lagundo, if I go to the website and search for Lagundo, it would bring back results similar, like Segundo, or even Laguna. So even if the AIML hadn't interpreted the handwriting exactly, a lot of times we're able to get you close to the results. So that was also extremely helpful. And so we launched the website at 12:01 a.m. on April 1st, 2022. And within the first 24 hours, the website received over 350,000 visitors, 13 million page views, and we already had over 220,000 name transcriptions. By the end of the first month after we launched, 1.6 million names had been transcribed. And we monitored social media with hashtag 1950 census just to see what was trending afterwards. And I put just a few examples here. The one I love is Denise Murphy. I hear about machine learning AI at work all the time, but I didn't fully appreciate its value until using the 1950 census index today. So a lot of the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So to date, we've had more than 3 million names transcribed, and the 1950 census website is still serving the public. It's getting between 550 and 600,000 page views per month. And we're also still receiving between 30 and 40,000 transcribed names per month. We're in the process of transferring all those transcribed names over into our catalog, our online catalog, where we've already moved over or put a copy of the 1950 census images there as well. And so I also included a link to the website if you'd like to go and search the 1950 census and transcribe names. And with that, I think, am I turning it over to Josh to run Hannah's presentation?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So if you'll stop sharing, I'll be able to start sharing her video.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, everyone, Hannah could not join us in person, but she did record her presentation in advance, and she will be speaking to us from before now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Bergman. I am the Litigation Director here at the National Archives and Records Administration, and I'm going to speak with you today about artificial intelligence, FOIA, and records management. I'm sorry I'm sending you this video. I had a couple of scheduling, traveling snafus, and this is the end result of that. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to be in two places at once and join the panel live, but I hope that this short video answers all your questions, and I know that my colleagues from the National Archives will also have wonderful presentations as well. So I just want to start on a big picture note, high hopes for artificial intelligence. I think agencies across the federal government are hopeful that AI will solve all of the problems, right? I think if you've worked in any bureaucracy for some amount of time, you know that there's always more work than there is time, more work than there is money, and the IT is always slightly behind by maybe a decade, where the private sector is, right? There are a lot of challenges to working in the public sector and dealing with records issues. And so people have put their hopes and dreams for solutions to records management problems, information governance problems, FOIA problems into artificial intelligence because it has a lot of promise, right? There are two interagency groups that have been kind of focused on this work, I would say, for many years at this point. One is the Office of Government Information Services FOIA Advisory Committee. So OGIS is part of the National Archives. They're the FOIA ombudsman for the federal government. And they have an advisory committee that sits in 2-year terms. And so the current committee has a subcommittee focused on FOIA modernization. The last term, they called it technology. I'm not sure what they called it the term before that, but basically every term since OGIS's inception, they've really had a subcommittee that's focused on this idea of technology and how to use technology to improve FOIA processing. And of course, as part of that, artificial intelligence has always been something that they've been looking to see what agencies can be doing. So I've linked here to a September of this year. They had a presentation from the State Department, and we'll talk a little bit more about the State Department shortly on leveraging technology to improve FOIA searches. And that is available on NARA's website. So I think it's a great resource if you want to delve deeper into this. The other interagency group is the Chief FOIA Officers Council. And the FOIA Advisory Committee includes, it's a mix of half government folks and half requester representatives. The Chief FOIA Officers Council is a group that is all government, all federal agency chief FOIA officers. And that group as well has a subcommittee that's focused on technology, use of AI, and how to improve these things. So we've got, I think, two key leaders in this space, I would say. The first is the State Department. They have taken a number of steps over the past couple of years to increase their use of AI within their FOIA processing world, as well as within the MDR processing, that's mandatory declassification review requests, the 25-year declass review process, a separate document review process, and then records management as well. The reason that I think state has kind of taken that comprehensive approach is that the person kind of overseeing that office has all those responsibilities. And so this is one of the things that you'll see in federal agencies, where you see a lot of interest in taking on these, like piloting new tools and trying to solve these problems, is where agencies have brought together FOIA, privacy, declassification review, or information governance, CUI programs, kind of under one umbrella and one shop. And sometimes that might be under the chief information officer or kind of adjacent to the chief information officer or in the general counsel's office. But in agencies where you see all of those programs brought together, they then are able to leverage kind of their collective power to get these tools in place. And they also see the benefits of using an AI tool or an e-discovery tool for some of this work. So State Department is one of those where they've got a lot of different programs focused on information governance or records management in one office. And they've got a key leader an assistant secretary who's really focused on trying to solve these problems related to FOIA backlogs, declassification backlogs, et cetera, with technology. His name is Eric Stein, and he's got a couple of presentations out there where he talks about what it all they're doing. So I've linked here to the chief FOIA, he's the chief FOIA officer for the State Department. And so in his annual report, he outlined some use cases for AI within the State Department. And then he's given a presentation to the American Society of Access Professionals. That's a group of FOIA staff throughout the federal government. So it's similar to the presentation that he gave in September to the OGIS FOIA Advisory Committee. And then he's, talks about the pilot program that they're doing for use of AI and machine learning in FOIA. The other key leader in the space is the Department of Justice's Office of Information Policy. OIP within DOJ sets, as the name suggests, they set policy related to FOIA. And so they're also at the forefront of processing FOIAs and doing some innovative work in that area. So several years ago, they began using these e-discovery tools that are common in the litigating units of the Justice Department to improve their FOIA processing. They have seen a significant amount of cost savings and time savings as compared to a human level review. They've been doing this for many years now. I would say more than 5 years for sure. And it has definitely improved their processing time. And then the other thing that I've linked here too is a MITRE tool. So MITRE is a think tank organization that works with government information in various ways. They've released something called the FOIA Assistant. And this is a tool that a couple of agencies are testing right now to help with FOIA processing, and it has some AI in it. And so I want to just kind of talk about the different ways that AI can help within the FOIA process and how maybe these agencies have used them. So one way is to use AI and use machine learning and assisted review to help narrow the universe of responsive records that you get back from a FOIA search. So let's say you've got a records request, it comes in, someone's asking for all emails about a particular topic, and they've got maybe some custodians, and you've got some dates you can limit it to. You do that search with your keywords and your custodians and your dates, and you get an enormous amount of responsive hits. Maybe you get 500,000 hits across your email system. You narrow that down by deduping it, and you're still like, there's like still 50,000 records. What am I going to do? That's a lot of records to review. So you can use an AI feature within an e-discovery tool to narrow that subset. So you might start you might start at the first page of results, and you're marking responsiveness or not. Are these records responsive? Yes or no? That's where, after you do a training set, the tool that you're using, if it has some machine learning in it, can take that training set and say, all right, Hannah said these 100 documents are responsive. I'm going to go and extrapolate the logic from those 100 documents and apply it to the other 49,900 records in this document set. That's one way in which a machine learning can help with FOIA processing, responsiveness review. The MITRE tool is a little bit different. It helps with review of redactions and content. So there you've got your subset of documents that are responsive, you've narrowed it down, but you've got a lot of privacy information, got a lot of deliberative process information that needs to be redacted. How can you identify that information? That's where the MITRE tool is unique in that it's trying to help with identification of that material. I will say the use of a tool to help with responsiveness review is very similar to what happens in litigation, what's very accepted in the e-discovery context by the courts. And the tools are really good at that. There's more than a decade now of experience with those kinds of tools, and I think people are pretty comfortable with them and how they work and what you're getting back and all that sort of thing. The idea that the tools are going to be helpful with identifying what content needs to be redacted, that's a harder problem for the AI to solve. And the tools are not as good at that, right? In part because in litigation, that's not necessarily it's really like a yes, no, I'm going to give you this or I'm not going to give you this. You're not typically doing this kind of redaction that you see in FOIA. So there's just not as kind of built up this history of working with those, with that same sort of level of need to do it in the private sector. But the MITRE tool is experimenting with that, and this is something that the tools are going to get better at, and I think where we see just so much hope. In particular, I think using a tool to find content that needs to be redacted time after time that has like privacy context will be helpful in deliberative process context. Right now, I think if you're just asking a tool to find all the social security numbers in a data set or in a set of emails, tools are really good at that. That's not really an AI task, right? Because that's pattern matching. This is more, what I'm talking about now is more about context and building on that context and how can the tools be helpful there. So also to bring it on to records management and AI, I've got a couple of resources here. One is a white paper that NARA issued, I think 2 or 3 years ago, on cognitive technologies. It talks about AI, robotics processing automation, et cetera. And then we also issued the machine implementable general record schedule. So for those of you in the records management world, NARA has general record schedules, which are applicable to records that are common to all agencies. And one of the things that we did was try and organize the GRS in this spreadsheet so that it could be translated easily by a machine into implementable instructions. Now, that's not AI per se, but it is a way in which you can automate disposition. And I just wanted to flag it as something that we've done in this space to help agencies with implementation. The UK National Archives has some market research and a white paper on AI and records management issues as well. I think are valuable. They really walk through the different technologies that are out there and different vendors and kind of what each tool has to offer. Really, I think you can take a look at that material and it is probably quite useful. I know it would be quite useful to a federal agency. I hope it would also be quite useful to a state agency, but it definitely speaks to kind of the same issues that we would have in the US implementing records management issues. And then I've got an example here, the Department of Interior ERDMS, Electronic Document and Records Management System, I think is what it stands for. ERDMS is a tool that Interior is using to do content analysis on emails and other documents and put them into a bucket for records retention based on the content that aligns to their record schedule. So for that to work, you need a record schedule that is machine implementable. See the first bullet. But you also need to be training the system to match content to particular items on the schedule. So it's a different kind of like responsive review than what you'd see in a FOIA search, but it's using the same principles. And so they're out there working in that and have been using that system for a while now. And I've just linked here to the privacy impact assessment for that system, which is just, you know, every agency that has IT systems has to issue these privacy impact assessments. You're like, what does that have to do with records management? It doesn't have anything to do with records management, except that it describes in detail how the system works. And that in and of itself is kind of useful and it's a public document. And so I've linked to it. And then you probably want to know, what's the National Archives doing? Why haven't I talked about that? We have Relativity, which is an e-discovery tool, and we've got a limited deployment of Relativity right now. We brought it on board to help assist with special access requests for Trump presidential records and to manage production of responsive documents. When at the end of an administration, NARA inherits all of the presidential records of that prior administration. Normally, this is a massive project. A ton of data has to be moved, right? And then we have to migrate that data, ingest it into our systems, and get it ready for search and review in response to access requests. That can take a very long time when you're using the archival processing that we do on the records. And so in order to just take the data in as quickly as possible and get it accessible to folks to turn around these records requests, these special access requests, particularly the January 6th committee needed access to a lot of information. We put a lot of the Trump administration records into a Relativity instance, and we're able to do searches on that instance while everything was being built in our archival system to, you know, our archival standards. So we'll wind down the use of Relativity for that purpose as our archival system, you know, is spun up and is able to do all of that work. That said, our archival systems don't have kind of this this AI, this machine learning capability that is within relativity. We hope to be able to integrate that kind of technology into those systems. It's just, it takes time and it takes money, and it's something we want to happen, but we haven't made happen yet. And I think the other challenge that we have with these types of systems is that from an archival perspective, we need the decisions to persist. So if we're doing a review of records in response to a FOIA request, we need to link that decision with the original record, and then we need to persist those decisions across time and data sets and repeat those. And an e-discovery tool isn't good at that. It's not good at kind of making those parent-child relationships and persisting those decisions across data sets, because it's really focused on a particular case set, right? So it's, you need to know what you're doing for like special access request A, but in 5 years, when you get special access request 793, you need to know what you did in that first year so that you can repeat it and make those similar decisions across another data set, where you might have similar content, or you might have the same records. You want to make sure that you're making the same release decision. And I think figuring out how to integrate these tools into our archival processing is something that we are just struggling with still, because it's such an enormous undertaking. And then, of course, that relates to resources, right? We're working on it. We're working on it. We need more resources, don't we all, right? But I think the conclusion I would say here is that there is widespread support for the use of the AI and machine learning and robotics process automation to improve any of kind of these repeatable tasks or these processing tasks where we know that machines can do better really than humans in this space. And we know from the e-discovery context that courts are really accepting of this. And there's a lot of benefit to it. So we need to get there. We're just trying slowly to get there. And agencies are experimenting with it. They're putting their toes in the waters. They're using, tools here and there. They're trying to improve things, but they haven't really embraced, there's not widespread integration of these tools in every agency's FOIA shop. There's these, like I just, kind of went over, there's agencies here and there that are doing this and that and see a lot of promising results and returns, but those are agencies that are well-funded and able to leverage kind of those bigger IT buys. So that's what I have to say. I hope the rest of my colleagues' presentations are really helpful, and I look forward to hearing how the afternoon panel went. Thanks.
I'll turn it over to Peter.
Okay, next we're going to Peter Anderton.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see my screen, and apologies for being able to see me too. So I'm Peter Anderton. I work, privileged to work in the innovation team and the product team here at Preservica, software company. And I'm joined by Simone Wagner, who's a product specialist who's looking at government applications of digital preservations and record preservation. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us here today. I'm going to kick off the presentation, but joined by Simone, talking about some of the use cases of AI in government archives and records management. So we have, here we go. There we go. So we're a proud sponsor and a COSA supporter for 8 years now, and that includes the education best practice, the Move It report we contributed to, and I'm proud to say we have 26 of the US states using the software. So that's where we fit into the structure, but we don't see ourselves as a as a supplier, we see ourselves as part of the community and contributing back and collaborating. And I'll talk a little bit about that on one of the what we call a special interest group, and inviting existing users and new users, or people who don't use Preservica, use a different system, other systems are available. We'd love to collaborate with people and find out more. And why I wanted to talk today is that there are many definitions of what AI is and what it does. And we've heard about some earlier, the different uses of AI or machine learning or RPAs and how it all fits in. So I thought, I think traditionally people on a presentation will look up a dictionary definition. Well, I thought I'd ask AI what it thinks AI is. And this is ChatGPT earlier today. I updated it earlier today. Obviously, the artificial intelligence, the development of computer systems that mimic human intelligence to perform tasks like problem solving and learning. But what I also did today was say, well, what isn't it? Well, it's not conscious. It's not infallible. We heard about the social input to content. So the citizen archivists and people validating what artificial intelligence machine learning comes up with. It also says it isn't, and this is ChatGPT, it isn't ethically autonomous. And it's not, and this bit makes me feel a lot more secure in what I do. It's not a substitute for human creativity or judgment, but it certainly helps, and it can advise, but it's not a substitute. So what I wanted to talk about is digital preservation, platform records preservation. Where do we hear artificial intelligence being used? Now, starting at the top left here, the gateway, the appraisal, the accrual, the acquisition processes, and this could be in Microsoft Purview or other systems, or reduction, capstone analysis of content coming in to the digital preservation system or archive. Another area top right here is in the metadata. Now, obviously, metadata can be fed out to other systems, but also people are asking for OCR, and OCR that does handwriting, and that's machine learning in that there's a feedback. We need a feedback of corrections and modifications so it gets better as it goes along. It also enriches metadata. It also, in the example I'll show in a few minutes, can remove metadata from certain fields so it can actually redact data and tell you why it's redacted it, or identify it and tell you why it's flagged it. The asset itself, sometimes when you redact, you can redact metadata, or you can augment metadata, or you can summarize metadata with generative AI. But sometimes the existing asset itself, if it contains an image or has information, or you want to summarize it. But if you want to remove something from an asset, we believe you actually create a new record. It's a new asset. You link the two, obviously, but you don't just change the metadata. You actually make a new asset with redacted content using AI to help and guide and create that, and then subsequently use AI to validate that. Generative AI is still very much in its infancy. We're talking with our users about how best to use this, but it seems to be the summary of what is in a set of objects, digital objects. Can you summarize this? Can you summarize the group? Can you describe what's in there? And then search. Now, we've heard earlier about search. One of the interesting aspects of AI search will be to find things in images, and that is not necessarily find this picture somewhere else or find this scan somewhere else. It can be find this thing in the scan, find this thing in the photograph elsewhere, and that will identify the object in the photograph and go and find it elsewhere. So it's very exciting to our users here. So lots of different definitions of what AI is, lots of people using it in different areas. Luckily, some of the previous speakers were talking about PII. We'll be showing a quick demo of that. So many solutions, and they're getting better, they're getting more creative all the time. And we're not experts in AI, we're experts in digital preservation, looking after the content. So rather than bake today's solution into a software product, what we try and do is link tightly to external systems. So you can have a best of breed solution, whatever that is, connected to your archive. So how that works, on the left of here, and I'll talk about the special interest group in a second, but how it works is inside the archive, and as I say, other solutions are available and they will use similar logic, is there's a trigger. Something triggers the action for you to call out to the external system. And the ones we'll be showing today are on ingest. When something comes in, send it out for PII, or send it out for scene description, or send it out for translation, or send it out for transcription. Send it out for transcription so you can handle the backlog and so on. Happens as a background task mostly, but it's also on request or on other tasks. And one of the things we've been working with our users for is what triggers a call out to machine learning or an AI or an external tool. I say external, could be a web service, could be external to your, it could be on premise, but locally within firewalls and things. So we set up a special interest group. Being in IT, we called it a SIG. And we set that up in August this year. And we have people representing key sectors of different industries, quite a few in government. And we've been working with a proof of concept on two key areas, namely metadata identification, metadata enrichment with redacted content, and PII identification. So metadata enrichment will be showing scene description, not facial recognition, not who's in this picture, but what is this picture. And obviously combined with what we'll be showing that. We have documented the framework. We are asking people, as I say, if you want to get involved, I'll share my email in a bit. Just send me an email. And there's no prizes for guessing the email model. So if you wanted to send an email to Simone Wagner instead, that would be simone.wagner@preservica.com and peter.anderton@preservica.com. So that's my introduction. I'd like to now pass over to Simone to talk about AI preservation in the context of state government.
Hi, again, my name is Simone. I'm working on the industry applications for Preservica, and also looking at kind of the use cases within the different industries for Preservica. So through Preservica's work with COSA and our government customers, we have built a deep understanding of the requirements of government bodies at different levels. We all know that there are pressures and mandates that records managers and archivists must adhere to on a daily basis. There are mandates that must be followed: litigation, filling records requests, maintaining effective operation between other government bodies like departments and agencies. And so more and more these records are in electronic format or are being converted to digital for the safety and access to information. So robust digital preservation of e-records is vital to the future of our government archives. There are also a wealth of assets across many departments that are required to be kept long-term or permanently in consistent and structured ways. And looking at the broader scope, each may have different and unique requirements that need to be considered. So AI has the potential to help meet these mandates by playing an important role in automating some tasks at scale to give archives a leg up and help increase efficiency. Next slide, Peter. So just some of the things that we have kept in mind as we are looking at AI. some of those mandates and things like the retention schedules and different state record laws as well. And next slide. So there is a lot of potential to use AI to help with the arrangement, description, and access to these records, which then can be refined and validated by archivists. So taking a look at use cases for government bodies, we are investigating practical applications for AI within digital preservation systems, including deleting at scale, either with the application of retention labels or duplication of files across departments, transcribing meeting records in multiple language to comply with open meeting laws, redacting PHI or PII in court records for an individual receiving potentially mental health services, or reasons why you might need to redact things like name and otherwise, and also generating descriptive metadata using image recognition for the identification of events. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Peter to demonstrate the last two use cases in action.
Thanks, Simone. So you're looking at the preservation system in the white screen at the back. The black screen at the front is Windows. I'm going to show an ingest process of a PDF. So we've got a PDF document in Windows here, which renders within Windows. You can see it. It's a case jurisdiction document, which you can see just below that. It's actually using a third-party viewer. Now, if I open up the destination within the preservation system and drag and drop it in, the ingest process starts. The copy has been done. The preservation process is running now, so the ingest is uploading the document, antivirus, checking the signature of the file, not the extension of what is the format, but it's actually opening the file and looking at the signatures against pronoun, a definition of it's 2,300 different signatures. Now, it will be applying any preservation actions to this to create a version, we would call it a representation of it for long-term preservation or one for access. So you can see this is now rendering within the preservation system, and there's no metadata, purposely no metadata on this when it comes in. And if we look at the preservation now, this has been populated into the metadata here. This is the redacted text at the top. And you can see that each of the pairs here of State of Ohio was redacted because of an organization. Michael Down was redacted because it was a person. Now, there's two use cases for this. One is redaction itself, so you generate new metadata. Another would be to actually kind of check whether things have got any PII in and create a flag rather than a redacted set of text. I'm also going to look at the MITRE test that was spoken of earlier and see if we can integrate that. So that's court documents, very simple proof of concept for identification and redaction of PII. And we've tried to make it as simple as possible. And so the only integration is a simple mapping of the call to the service that does the PII out of Preservica. It could also return, as I say, a redacted asset, a scan, and create a new representation of it, a new asset linked to the original. So the next demonstration, and again, we've got the preservation system in the light window and Windows in the darker window, is scene description. Now, this is scene description, as I say, not facial recognition, because if we look at the photo, you know, many of us here can recognize some faces in the photo there. But this is about describing the scene and getting a caption for the screen, and also maybe identifying objects in that story. So again, simple drag and drop in, the upload is happening, the ingest process is happening in the background automatically. And this is applying whatever policies you've got set. So it could be the government policies or the recommended National Archives recommendation policies for migration for long-term and migration for access. Working on those now. So the ingest process bar is coming on quite nicely. Ingest has happened. You can see the document, the picture, the photograph is now within the preservation system. There's, say, the process in the background now is populating the metadata. There's the original. There's been no generations made for it. It's got the technical metadata in there. So whilst we're browsing on the technical metadata, if we look at the metadata here and do a quick refresh of the screen, so just click the refresh button at the top, it's already populated a caption, a group of people standing in a meeting. We're 79% sure, just shy of 79% sure that's confident. And what we could do is set up automated referrals, workflow to people to actually say, look, there's anything less than a 60% or whatever you've set the threshold is reviewed. These are the tags that are found in the picture. Not that exciting when it's people, a person. A little bit more exciting when it's a lake or a table or a certificate or something else it's identifying. And what we're working on now is we've got the search here. So we're searching for a group of people. It comes up with that document in the search. So you can search for a meeting or a group of people or whatever that is in the scene. You can combine it with facial recognition. So you can say a meeting with this person in it. And what we're working on now is a proof of concept to feed back. So we get a machine learning cycle going through. And that is the end of the quick run through of what we're working on. So, as I say, we'd love to work together with people on the call. So, you know, how can we better do intelligent AI for automating and enhancing long-term preservation? How can we automate the policy alignment from the agencies and the departments for state archives? Born archives that are born digital in, say, Microsoft 365 can be born archival. They're not just born digital, made digital. These will forever be destined for an archive. How can we simply automate that with your guidance? And then preservation in place. You know, how can we keep things forever without interfering with the business of government? So with that, I'm finished. I'd like to thank you for your time. And I've got a slide that says questions, but I think the organisers today have a panel coming up.
All right, thank you, Peter, and thank you to all our speakers. At this time, we're going to open it up to questions and discussions. Feel free to type your questions into our chat box. You should also check out that chat box. I see that several of our speakers have included links to some of the things they were talking about. I see we do have one question come in to us through the Q&A, and I believe this is directed to Josh Hackel when he was talking about the poster and talking about making sure that the AI was not making up things. The question is about the apparently conflicting tasks to have the AI not make up things, but be able to add nuance, which might require making things up.
Yes, that's a difficult one. Things we've seen before to make it easier is, you know, try to have the AI think of it as a character. Basically, pretend you're an archivist, pretend you're someone who's expert in this field. So it kind of has a context in what the responses should be. So it doesn't look for any data, just kind of guess something. It tries to find something that's specific to that area and that kind of character set that you tell it to be.
So any other questions that you have for any of our speakers, feel free to type it into our chat box. Make sure that you're directing that to everyone. All right, here is a question from Aaron Falder. What sort of documentation about metadata source exists within Preservica? Is there a way to identify what is human generated versus AI generated?
Peter, I think you're muted.
You're mute, yeah.
There you go. I was talking to myself again. Yeah, thank you for the question. So one simple way of doing that would be when you do the mapping of the external source of metadata to the internal field, you can label the field as such, or you can group the fields. So you could have a group of externally generated metadata. So that would be the easiest way to do it. What group is it in? And what have you called it? You can you create custom names and call it AI generated name or external description.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and say, I think, what Carol highlighted in her presentation too, I think our user community really appreciated the way we did distinguish that. Carol's examples had that these were AI suggested tags, and then there were kind of the human validated ones. And our feedback on that has been really positive.
It's an interesting question because it speaks to how the source of something can really impact how you would use it. I was interested by how much collaboration that NARA has going with how many groups. Could you speak to maybe some of the things you've learned from the collaboration process, what works and what doesn't work?
That's a great question. I'll jump in, but Carol, feel free to jump in as well if others have thoughts on collaboration. I think some best practices are to meet frequently and have like a steady rhythm to that collaboration. I think that's been really beneficial. So we do schedule meetings out with a certain periodicity with different stakeholder groups, different collaborators, because I think that regular conversation is good. I think another lesson learned is to collaboratively put together agendas, because I think that makes a difference, and make sure that there's room for conversation and questions and time to share about things that aren't fully formed yet or are working to get early upstream input instead of just checking in and saying this is what's kind of baked are some lessons learned and best practices that I have. And Carol, I don't know if you want to share some too, and then anybody else that wants to jump in.
I was just going to say, with regards to 1950 census, so we had a lot of collaboration with our stakeholders throughout the development process for the website. So we were showing, I think, in 2-week sprints what we had been developing and getting their feedback and making a lot of, what some ended up being important changes before we deployed. So another lesson learned is just to actively engage your stakeholders throughout the process.
Excellent. Another question we have is, we heard about machine learning producing more false positives. How do you incorporate checking for those false hits in the workflow when you're dealing with large data sets?
From a software side and on our innovation team, we have a team looking at innovative methods. One of the things is we're looking at the confidence level of what's coming in and seeing how we can use that. But also as we feed content back or corrections back, that can identify fields, if you like, or areas that we're not getting good confidence on, and that can start, we can start looking into that area then and maybe do a bulk edit or something to correct that.
Anyone else want to add to that question?
I agree with that. I would just add on the point about like kind of iterating and building, like don't feed it a huge data set to start with, kind of build up to that so that you can refine it as you go would be my my addition, but I agree with everything that Peter said as well.
Okay, we had another question come in through the question and answer function. I'm not as familiar with Zoom, so I'm not sure how you enter into that Q&A, but feel free to use that if you prefer it to the chat box. I see that there is a way that you can ask your question anonymously using the Q&A function. So the question is, according to news reports and popular media, government trustworthiness is at an all-time low. Do any of you perceive implementation of AI tools to change this perception to increase or decrease that trustworthiness?
I do. I see we're discussing ways of validating content against AI, not populating, but validating it. So you actually use AI to spot AI, and is this a synthesized response? And maybe then even check against different sources or create an alternate field for you to compare it against. So that's one way. And obviously earlier you spoke about flagging the sources of the information. Once you've got a suspect source, you can go looking at that.
I think that's really important. I would add on to, I think, transparency around what your methodology has been and telling those stories. So we, I think, have, set a good example for that at NAR, how we've told this story about how we worked, use the AI tools on the 1950 census. I think as we move forward and get ready to look at a future point, adding machine suggested tags, we will either write like a newsletter article or a blog post and kind of share that story about how we got there. And I think trying to make it as plain language as possible so that people can understand, and putting it out on ways like a blog gives folks an opportunity to ask questions as well. And so that's just something we're planning as a best practice to share out and engage the how, because I think it helps to build trust. And I think ways that when you're open to that feedback and those questions too, I think that that's a really important part of engagement as well.
And just to tag on to what Jill just said, so especially with the 1950 census, it was communication, and that transparency, how we were using it. And we did a lot of webinars, meeting with different groups to just go over all of that and take questions and answer questions.
Yes, transparency was mentioned a lot today as an important element of this. And I believe Jill also talked about looking at the ethics that were connected to it, and also the privacy aspects, to make sure that in looking at the benefits of the tools, we're also aware of their possible drawbacks and misuses. Other questions? Don't hesitate to ask. We do have this Zoom realm reserved up through 3 p.m. Eastern, so we do have some time. Don't think that you don't have time to fit your questions in.
I have a question for Simone and Peter, if I can jump in with a question. On the image recognition and when they're starting to identify people, can you start to create your own data set where it starts, like if you have frequently appearing individuals in photos, will it get better at, say, if you fed it some of your Preservica team photos, it will start to recognize Simone better as it goes along in a group, or different shots of Simone over time? Like, is that part of what that model is doing, or where you're going to take it?
that's where we want to take it. So that'll be the feedback thing we want to do
Yeah.
now, to start feeding it, because that's where the power is when it starts learning, I think.
And
I think
will
there's
that, go ahead.
oh sorry.
No,
I
no,
was
go.
just gonna say there's a lot of opportunity, rather than feeding it in also the image or face recognition for maybe also elected officials. You want to kind of group those photos together for people that are recognizable in your community and make sure that those are accessible in one place as well.
Help with discovery. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's cool. Yeah, I'm also just thinking about potential for, again, kind of within your own repository and institution, but then also like those larger connections. Another project that cooperative that National Archives is involved in is with that SNAC, the social social networks and archival context project, where again it connects individuals, and there could be ways to do it in a multi-institutional way and bring that together for discovery, which is has such cool potential.
Let us know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, here is a question for Jill and or Carol. We are currently in the middle of a project to use Textract and Comprehend to automate redaction of our records with human intervention. Beyond communicating with the development team, which I agree is key, are there any takeaways you can share in using the tools or things you discovered along the way in the pilot?
Jill, do you want to speak to that one since it has to do with comprehend as well as text track?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And then Carol, if there's anything that I'd feel free to jump in. Sure. So I would say, based on our pilot usage so far of Comprehend, we were finding it beneficial to develop some custom models. We found like we were getting less false positives that way. And so we were going, if we pursue that, we'll continue building on that. We were also interested in starting to explore layering SageMaker on top of that as well. So I think that it's good to do some comparison. My suggestion is also to kind of do a little bit of A/B testing on the models that are there out of the box, and then spend some time on a small data set, do a comparison with your own custom model and see, and then compare those results and see what was going to work better for you going forward. I think in Carol's use case, she had the very specific set of the census records. And I think with the other model we were looking at, it was going to be more general. So initially we thought we wouldn't develop a custom model for it, but we ended up in the end where we kind of took stock of lessons learned. We still have a little more testing to do, but that's kind of where we landed in the end, which wasn't what we initially anticipated. So it's something that was, really came out of kind of our assessment and testing. And again, anybody feel free to jump into about any lessons learned using OCR or Comprehend or just training custom models versus out of the box models.
Another question is, can the transcription option result in substantial changes to original data or information that it renders the original not credible or modifies it too much to be valid?
Wait, I need to read it. That was an interesting question, but I see it's in the Q&A and I need to read it. I know you just said it.
I've also copied it in the chat in case
Okay,
anybody
thanks.
needs it there.
I want to make sure I'm interpreting the question right, though, because you're asking about the OCR kind of transcription, Citrina, or are you asking about crowdsourced transcription? Oh,
Yeah,
crowdsourced or census. Go ahead, Carol. Yeah.
so with census, one of the things I think we did well was that when you do a search on the 1950 census website and it brings back results, we show you exactly what that original or the OCR that was extracted, how that appears in the record. And then we show you directly below that what names have been transcribed and added to the index. So in terms of substantial changes, I mean, one of the things with crowdsourced data is, we don't have the resources to be able to do a comparison before that transcription is submitted to say, is that exactly what was on the record? So I think one of the ways that you deal with that is like we did with the 1950 census and putting, both sets of data out there so that people can see what it was originally, how it was interpreted by the AI, and then what people have contributed to the record as well.
I see there's also a conversation going on in the chat box, wondering if COSA can make use of some of these crawls. Josh, I don't know if you want to expand on that audibly.
Sure. Hello, everyone from behind the scenes. Josh Hager, co-chair of Advocacy and Outreach. Colleague Catherine and I helped put the panel together, so thank you so much for being here. This discussion has made me think. We've been trying to talk in an advocacy and outreach group for a while about how do we help our institutions speak to each other with collaboration, and that was one of Jill's central themes was collaboration. It came up in Carol's presentation and in Peter's, and Hannah's talking about discovery. So it made me think, with SNAC, and I'll let Jill, if you want to fill in what SNAC is in a second, perhaps there's a way for machine learning to be set up to go crawl finding aids and catalogs to generate, that sort of, like, how nice would it be if you could go to something like a ChatGPT tool and say, which state archives and territorial archives have records relating to departments of, gaming or departments of wildlife, and what are they? Boom. And the kind of that robustness is a lot of what SNAC is doing, but maybe we could levy some of the tools that Peter and Simone have been talking about, and maybe when things come ingested. This is a long term, and if you've worked with me, you know that it's a big, I do big ideas for these things, but there could be something to that. So Jill, do you want to fill in what SNAC is and why I think there could be potential to make this sort of robust tool?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing this up, Josh. So I put a link to SNAC in the chat, and so it's a cooperative, broad-based, multi-institution collaboration. NARA is one of the founding institutions for it, and they offer a SNAC school to help train, and so it brings together authorities for people in particular, but I think there's, again, lots of potential here with different intersections, and it provides that linked open data and permalinks and brings together materials, content related to that individual across institutions so that it can be a go-to source. I'll say right now, I think we're seeing librarians and archivists as like the key users of it, but I think that there's potential for AI to consume it as a corpus. I think that there's a lot of other things we could do for it, because I think when you get to a point where SNAC is, and some of our other databases too, where we have like pretty standardized data and a lot of potential there to link it and do more with it. And I see somebody here in the comments too saying what we can do with semantic searching and some of these things that are going to be possible now because of the sizes of the data sets. And I also want to just tag Carol, if there's anything else you want to add about SNAC, the SNAC team is on Carol's staff.
No, thanks, Jill. And I will definitely take this back to Jerry as well. He's our SNAC liaison.
Thanks, y'all. I love when we can take our Electronic Records Day and have it inspire potential new ideas and new ways of thinking. And I certainly think everyone on the panel has done an amazing job of making us certainly think. And amazing work you've done so far, but amazing work to come for sure. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to say something about Electronic Records Day for anybody that might not know, it was designed to raise awareness about how crucial electronic records are in our everyday lives in so many fields. And it's put on October 10th because that's the 1010, like in computer coding. And COSA provides a lot of resources to help any group or archives that might like to promote Electronic Records Day, perhaps through their social media or for events. And please do visit the COSA website. Might be a little late this year, but if you want to plan on doing something next year, it's never too early to start. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you again to all of our speakers, and also to Josh and Catherine for planning this panel for us on Electronic Records Day. Please stay tuned for our upcoming webinars, and we hope to see you again soon.